Welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. Tonight we have returning guest, Shamanic Healer and Teacher Lindsey Scharmyn, speaking about what is demonic possession and much more. But before I introduce her, check out Raised by Giants on Rokfin. It is a completely uncensored platform. Go over there, set up a free account, get all of my regular content I post here on YouTube, and sign up for Rokfin's premium content, which is far less than a YouTube premium account, at only $10 a month. And you'll get all of my premium uncensored content when it gets released, and all of the other creators' premium content as well, like Beyond Classified, Charlie Robinson, Jay Dyer, Zero with Sam Tripoli, Tinfoil Hat, Eddie Bravo, and Rex Bear Leak Project, and much more. Check the link in the description to sign up for the video streaming platform, Rokfin. Also, check out C60 Purple Power. It is the most powerful antioxidant on the planet. Helps with energy levels, skin problems, infections, eyesight, brain cognition, EMF radiation, and a lot more. It's a free radical sponge that gives your body the ability to heal itself. And if you use promo code GIANTS10 from the link in the description, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. I highly recommend it. I've been using it for over a year with my own money, and I wouldn't recommend something that doesn't work. Lindsey Scharmyn, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for coming back on. It's been a while since you've been on the show, so this is going to be a really great conversation. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, Ryder. It has been a long time.
Yeah, I think the first time was like way back when I first started the show, like a couple of years ago. I think it's been a minute.
Yeah. You've come so far.
Done so much. And so have you. So I titled this video, What is Demonic Possession? Because I think that there's a lot of confusion, and because a lot of people, they equate demonic possession to religious terms and, Christianity and all that. And I'm not so sure what's going on there, but I think that you're a really good person to discuss this with, because I haven't done really too many paranormal shows discussing paranormal activity and stuff. I've been really focused on the UFO and the whole alien narrative and stuff. So this is a good opportunity to talk about some paranormal things that I don't normally get to talk about. So I know this is a blanketed question, but I like starting them out with kind of blanketed questions. What is demonic possession?
Yeah, it is a huge blanket question, and it covers so much. And it's interesting for me because I've dealt with demonic attachment and interference in my own life and experience, and this is part of what led me to help other people heal themselves from the same or similar, I should say, at least. And so I get a lot of people who come to me who feel like they're experiencing demonic encounters, at least, right? Possession is like a whole other level of this thing, but at least demonic encounters or demonic interference. And I always say it's probably 90% of the time that's not actually what's happening. So it is interesting to think about, what isn't demonic possession. Is most of the time what I find instead is that we are sort of creating our own interference and psychic disturbances from our own psyche, from our own repressed energies, from our own division within ourselves, and from our own traumas that are unhealed. And it can look very similar sometimes to that. And so a lot of people come to me with wanting to get rid of a demonic attachment and end up finding out that they don't have one actually, but there is healing to do still, and they're even of a similar nature. The same healing path can help you to patch up some of those internal wounds, and can also therefore disallow demonic interference and even possession as well. So it is interesting. It's interesting that there's overlap. It's interesting that it is the same sort of tools and processes that are going to help people to relieve themselves of both sides of that coin. But demonic possession is literally, there is an outside entity and intelligence that is attempting to inhabit your body physically, and take over your physical, habits and self. That's extreme. I've actually never ever seen that. I shouldn't say that. I've seen it in my life. I haven't experienced it, and now no one I've ever worked with has even experienced a slight bit of it either. Unless you're looking at, in the Chinese traditional medicine, I should say, not traditional Chinese medicine, but classic Chinese medicine, even before traditional Chinese medicine, the idea of possession was in sort of what we might see as layers, or like a spectrum. So you could actually consider even demonic sort of presence in your sphere of influence as a level of possession, but it doesn't really work in the West, because when we're talking about possession, we're talking about, the demon is in, it's gotcha, like it's in there. And that's what we're talking about, really. And so I don't know if that, is a helpful way of thinking about it over here in the West, but it might be for some people to think about it as a progression, as a spectrum, because it can start with some things that are not really, that latched in deeply. It can just be that sort of interference level and disturbing thoughts, disturbing dreams, and disturbing experiences. And that sort of thing can happen, and that can be leading towards what would eventually become possession if it weren't stopped, if you didn't find a way to heal yourself and release that. So there's kind of that whole gamut of experiences, and we can kind of talk about any of that.
Well, the thing is like, are those dreams and are those experiences actually real? I think that that's the problem here. And I think that there's a fine line between drug psychosis, mental illness, and a whole host of other things that can be combined in with some sort of possession, spirit influence, having these weird dreams, these weird experiences, having paranormal experiences, so how much of this have you discovered is something that can be actually identified, like something like a real mental illness, or like a drug psychosis, right? Because drug psychosis can like do all kinds of crazy things to your psyche. It can make you see things that aren't there. It can, you can be hearing voices and all this. So where does this really start? Like, how did this really be, come to be as like a possession? Did this have something? Basically what I'm asking is, can anybody have like an attachment without, because I think that drugs and a lot of these things and mental illnesses kind of open us up to something that can attach to us, or something that can influence us. And then there's another thing too. Well, before I get too far ahead, you have any comments on that?
Well, yeah, there is really no difference. If you are opening portals and doorways via drugs and other self-abuse, there are energies that are going to come and take advantage of that. And they're never going to fail to come take advantage of that, because they're everywhere. And that's what they do. I mean, that's what they feed off of, and that's what they're looking for always. So I've never met someone who is suffering from any mental illness who didn't have these entities around them feeding off of them. And I've never met anyone who was doing, self-abuse of any kind, whether it's via drugs or porn, right, or some other self-abuse, that doesn't have these entities that are around them and feeding off of them. So the two go hand in hand. And you could ask, like, did the entity cause the mental illness, or did the mental illness invite the entity? And my answer is, why would it really matter? It's a chicken egg thing, right? The truth is just therefore that you know how to heal it now, right? You know what to not do at the very least, and you can start to head the directions of what to do to disallow these things to have access to you and feed off of you. So, and this is especially true in really severe psychosis, that there are always really profound entity attachments, and it's much more likely that you get towards actual possession at that point, what we would call actual possession, because you've gone far enough down that path, right? There's a really excellent interview, if you haven't talked to him before, Jerry Marzinski, and he's been on Rogue Ways a few times as well. And his experience as a clinical psychologist in a mental hospitals, and he came from a point of not having any, paranormal, he wasn't looking for that. He didn't believe in that, but after a while working there, he had to have so many experiences that he could not explain otherwise. And he had to start to ask himself, like, what is actually happening with these people that we call schizophrenic, or we call delusional, or we call psychotic? Because it was obvious to him that there was some sort of extra paranormal entity or intelligence that was interacting with them. They would know things they couldn't possibly know. They would suddenly have superhuman strength. They would be able to get out of and into like locked doors without the keys, and things that we would call paranormal or even poltergeisty would be happening around these people. And it was over and over and over and over again. So he has all these case studies and all of these documented experiences that support this. And, from the spiritual point of view, through, my own spiritual eye and many other people as well, when you look at people who are experiencing these delusions or these psychotic states, you can see the entities swarming around them and interacting with them. People have seen also, and I've seen when people are in the throes of various addictions, there's often something, it's literally on the back usually, and it's like hooks into the head and the heart area, and it's like siphoning energy off people. And people have said it before, like, get the monkey off your back. I mean, like, people know, right? Even when they're not really in this sort of level of looking at things from this spiritual point of view or this paranormal point of view, they still know. And we develop these types of sayings for these reasons, right? There's a reason that saying exists. There's literally something on your back. It's not controlling you. You don't get a free pass. You don't get to say like, oh, well, I did all those crazy things because this thing was on me. No, you invited that thing by heading that direction and opening those doorways, and it influenced you, but it wouldn't have been able to if you weren't already open to it, right? You still have responsibility to bear too, which is a hard pill for many people to swallow.
Absolutely. And there's this book that I read. It's called An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. And it basically talks about, it's this gentleman that's a psychiatrist that goes around to all of the big prisons in the United States and studies schizophrenia and paranoia and people that claim to have this kind of possession. They hear voices and stuff in his head, well, in their head. And he basically comes to the conclusion that if you cure the mental illness, well, if you attempt to cure the mental illness, I don't know if there really is, it's up in the air if you can cure mental illness or not. But if you cure or help the mental illness, the voices and the entity tend to go away. So it almost seems like that the mental illness is the cause of the entities. Right. So I don't know, that book is really interesting. I'll actually put a screenshot of it up here so people can check it out. It's a quick read. It's only like 100 pages and you can read it in like 2 hours, but it's a really interesting study into mental illness and possession and hearing voices and paranoia and how they're all kind of connected.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And, we treat mental illness like it is this weird thing that's like a boogeyman off in the dark. But the truth is that I've never met anyone who didn't experience something that we would call mental illness. Depression is considered a mental illness, right? And I understand very much so that there's a difference between diagnosable, ongoing severe depression and the type of depression that we might experience if our dog dies or someone we love passes on, or we lose a job while we have to move, or, there's something overwhelming in life. At the same time, it's the same experience, right? It's just shorter duration and it's easier to shake. Or we've all experienced anxiety, right? But again, maybe not at clinical, diagnosable, pathological levels, but we've experienced it before. We've also almost likely experienced something that would be considered delusion by modern medicine, right? Whether we heard something that like, what was that? It wasn't really there, so no one else heard it or something, or we saw something that was like, I don't know, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Or is this a quote unquote hallucination, or otherwise? So it's interesting, first of all, that we have even this idea that mental illness is like something wrong with something broken in somebody. And it's like, no, these are all experiences that everybody has actually. The difference is that these people are experiencing it at a level that is, affecting their life in a way that is making it less livable right? Or they're unable to find peace or ease, right? That's the difference, really. And that is something that is definitely changeable, right? The idea of curing as a Western medical thing, I don't know. People have their own idea about what that might mean or whatnot. But can people find peace and ease again, no matter their supposed illness? Absolutely. I have friends who are schizophrenic. They're diagnosed schizophrenic. They've had what are considered deep delusions, and they've had what are considered, these hallucinations and whatnot. And they don't even take medication, but they've come to the place where we used to be in most cultures throughout history, which is understanding that there just are some people who see and feel and know and experience life in ways that we don't. And it doesn't make it not real. And this is another thing. Jerry Marcinski is part of this movement, but there's a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists around the world who are a part of this too, where we attempt to no longer say to the person, you're delusional, that's not real, you're not hearing these voices, they're not real voices, you're not seeing that thing, that's not a real thing that exists. And instead going, yes, you do hear that, and you hear and see that, and I know that you hear and see that, and that does not make it not real because I am not hearing and seeing it. It is very real for you, right? And what is reality except what you're experiencing, what you are seeing and hearing and knowing and feeling? And so to have people tell you that's not real is actually not helpful at all. It actually stresses you out even more, because now you're thinking, I'm broken, there's something wrong with me, reality isn't knowable, right? And I cannot experience reality correctly. That's not helpful for you. So instead, if people are acknowledging, yes, you are experiencing that in Israel, and you get to choose whether or not you respond to it, react to it, take it as something that you need to, treat as, I don't know, the same as level of reality as like the things you can touch and see that other people can too. That's up to you. You get to decide that. And this is now therapeutic. And now you have more control and more power. You're empowered. And one of my schizophrenic friends has gotten to the point where he lives a completely normal life. He has his own business that he runs and that he is successful at. And he is engaged in the community. He is pro-social. He has, friends and family and dogs and all of this rich life because of that sort of approach of saying, yeah, all the things I experience are real. I just get to decide, when it's happening and I don't want it to, then here's the things I'm going to do to start to, release from that, disconnect from that, and go back to something else that I find more soothing or physically tangible, right? And I get to choose the times where I don't. Because again, in many societies and cultures throughout history, we used to treat these people as what? As shamans and healers, as people who could go to the other side and gain information and see and hear things that we couldn't, and bring it back for the rest of us to use for healing in various ways. And that's exactly what this person does, right? And they do it when they want to now, and they do it in ways that are productive for them. And then when they don't want to, they found ways of sort of turning it off, or not, dampening it a bit, right? And just like you would, like in a normal, if you had some people come up to you on the street and they were like, hey, da da da, and you were like, I don't want to talk to you, and you walked away. It's like, right? We all can learn these methods too. So even what we call mental illness, or that we think of as like severe and uncurable, has ways of appropriately dealing with it and integrating it back into a whole happy life and self. It's not very common, though. It's more common you're going to find someone who's like, here's a bunch of drugs and you're broken and you're always going to be. So there you go. Bye-bye.
Well, the only issue that I really have with confirming somebody's delusional thoughts and ideas and what they might be perceiving as real is if it's further going to hurt them, right? If they're getting nothing but negative stuff and self-harm stuff, because a lot of full-blown schizophrenic people like hear voices to like kill themselves, right? Or harm others or murder someone else. So it's like, what do you do in that situation?
But why would you lie to them and say, no, they're not saying that to you, that's not real? Like, they are saying that to them. It is real. So you're not just affirming everything like, yeah, kill yourself. Like, no, you're just saying, I know that's real. I know you're hearing that right now. And like I said, you're then going to help empower them to choose what they want to do. Do you want to hurt yourself and kill people? I don't know. Most people don't, right? And anyways, the therapist would know how best to help them get to that place where they didn't want to, if they did want to. But the key is not in telling them that they're not experiencing that. But that's been the tradition. That's been the de facto treatment methodology in the United States and the West for many, many decades, is to tell them it's not happening, it's not real.
So what's your thoughts on the secret space program and the secret space program assets and all these super soldiers that have created this entire narrative, and it's a part of their delusion and half of it's fake? Would you say to keep confirming that what they're experiencing is real just because it's real to them?
Well, I don't know that most of those people are even telling the truth. So you wouldn't say to a liar that their lies are true, right? If someone's genuinely honest, though, and they're experiencing some kind of a delusion, again, there's no point in telling them they're not experiencing the delusion. It's not saying that you agree with them, that you think it's the best, that they should go, lie or kill or torture or maim. You're just saying, I understand that that is what you are experiencing. It is true that you are experiencing that. And that level of affirmation doesn't require you to go against any immoral standings that you may have, and it definitely doesn't require you to lie. Right. And it would be a lie, actually, if you said to them, no, you're not experiencing that. That is the lie, because they are experiencing it. Whether it's what we consider real or not is a totally different question that you then help them determine, what they want to do with the information that comes through to them that we can't experience. I don't know anything about the secret space program itself, except that there are going to be a lot of agents and liars that were put there intentionally to create lies and illusions for people to consume. So, like I said, I don't find it positive to affirm lies with anybody in any program, secret or not. And again, they're not actually experiencing those things. They're just lying about it. Are there actually people who go out and experience moving through the universe in various ways, and possibly with or without various governments? I have no idea. Like, I don't know. If they're genuinely experiencing that and they're not liars, then cool for them. Like, I don't know why it would matter. To me, at least, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think it matters to a degree, because I know that you're not familiar with the secret space program or the super soldiers, but they convince people that their experiences are real physical experiences, right? When they're not, right? I mean, Corey Good has come out in those court depositions and said that he made everything up and that everything is fake.
That's my
right?
point. Like, why,
And
if he's a liar, then he's a liar. The end.
yeah, so it's like, how do we determine what's fake, what's real, what's a delusion, what's not a delusion? What do they believe it? If they believe it, then are we supposed to reinforce their belief, even though their belief isn't real and that it's fake, even though that they believe it? You know what I mean? So it's a really tricky situation when it comes to, this kind of topic. Like, if something is known to be, fake and false, but somebody else believes it with their whole heart, then what are you supposed to do in that situation, right? Do you say, oh well, you're fake, you're making this stuff up? But what if they actually believe it? Because there are some people that I've ran into that I've claimed to be a part of these programs that legitimately believe that they went to space for 20 years, and then when they were age regret and fought aliens for 20 years in space, and then they were age regressed back to the very point that they were taken, right? And they're taking this as like and they're putting it out there as an actual legitimate physical experience, right? When it's impossible. That doesn't line up with reality. That's not a physical possibility in this 3D physical reality, right? It's not. When you put common sense and critical thinking to it, it doesn't make any sense. So like it's a really touchy, weird subject on that front.
I guess, like, here's my take on it is, like, first of all, it literally doesn't matter at all. I've never even known any of that stuff that you're talking about. My life is no different, right? So it doesn't matter at all. If they want to believe that's happening to them, I have no problem with that. If other people are in a place where that's what they want to do, is join in them with that delusion and read that fan fiction and have that whole experience, also doesn't matter to me. If that person then comes to me and says, I'm having a hard time regulating my life, or I'm miserable, or I'm sad, or I'm whatever, right? And then they're asking me to help them with that. And they're saying, like, I believe this has happened to me. Even then, I'll still say, you believe that's happened to you. And then I'll maybe point out, like, has it been helpful for you to believe that? Has it increased your positivity in life? Do you feel empowered? Are you able to do the things that make you happy as a person? And if the answer is no, is it possible that you let go of some of those beliefs and maybe focus on other things, right? Because again, it's not, why would it affect my life if they think that's happened to them? I don't care. I don't care if you think you're a dog or you're a fucking unicorn and you prance around with like tails and streamers and whatever, like, doesn't affect me at all. The only time it will ever matter to me is if you're coming to me and asking me for my help in some way, right? Or again, if you're going to some kind of psychological or psychologist or therapist or something, they're also then going to care. But before that moment, who cares? And even when you're saying, oh, but there's people they're kind of gathering up into their lives and making them believe this stuff, that's not their fault. That's those people's fault. Those people have a problem or don't, right? Those people chose to go find someone who is not believable and go off of no evidence and then, throw their money or their time or their life into this thing. That happens in every category we can think of, right? It happens in health things. It happens with people who say they're spiritual healers. It happens with people who are just selling produce at a store. Like, you can get fallen in with some pretty shisty shit no matter what category you're looking at life. And that's all you, right? That's the person, the individual's responsibility. So even then, I'm not too concerned with their lies or their things that they're, I understand it's different if this is like your life's work and you're dedicated to bringing out what you see as the truth. It is very frustrating to see people get away with this, especially when they're so well funded and they're the ones getting like all the attention, right? Because it's directed at them on purpose, because it's misdirecting everybody from what might actually be going on. But I can't control that, so I don't care.
Well, it's not so much that it affects me personally, but I tend to think of the community as a whole, right? It affects, like, I don't care either, right? Me personally,
Right.
don't
Yeah,
care.
you're
Right?
not affected by it.
Does not affect me in the least bit, but it does affect the community, and I care about the community, right? And when people are putting out bogus bullshit, fairy tale nonsense, space traveling stories and passing them off as real stories, and they're making money off of that and writing books about that and making it be a physical, real thing, that's a problem. It's not a problem for me personally, because again, I'm just like you. Like, I don't personally care, but I do care about the integrity and the honor of the community, right? And it's muddying the waters of real researchers and real people that have been trying to, blow the whistle on real things that are going on Earth. That's the problem that I have with it, right?
It's
Has
very frustrating.
nothing to do with me personally. I could,
Yeah.
care less, right? It's more
Well,
about the integrity and the honor of the community and the people that are actually putting out real good information, and they've turned it into something that it's not, right?
Well, that's why people are lucky to have you, because you do care and because you do understand and you get to promote that side of things and help people see through the illusions. Unfortunately, there's so many unhealthy people out there that you can't stop all of them from deluding themselves. They're just going to. It's a nice story for them and they love it.
Entertainment, right?
Right. And I get the same thing in my line of work too, right? I get people who come to me and they're like, oh, you're this, you're a shamanic healer, or you're this or that, so you can do this for me. And I'm like, I don't know who told you that. That's not what we do, or that's not what I do. I mean, you could probably find someone who would tell you that's what they're doing, but it's not me. And it is frustrating in a similar way, right? There's people who have been misled and who have been sold a really nice, convenient, fun, illusion. And it's like fan fiction. It's very fun for people.
And you're right. You see that in all the different communities, right? You got them in the tarot card community. You got them in the spiritual healing. You got them in the energy healing community. You got them everywhere in the disclosure community. It's kind of like a rampant I want to believe type of thing, and they want to believe so bad that they're willing to completely take out any common sense, critical thinking, and logical conclusions to things, because
Yeah.
they want that. I want to believe so hard in the core of their being that they're willing to take any kind of information and make it true to them, right?
And often it's about shortcuts too, right? We're like, "Ooh, this sounds nice to me because I don't have to take as much responsibility if I believe this," right? If someone else can do this for me, or if I have a twin flame and all I have to do is find them and then kiss them, and then magically my whole life is better, and all the stress and the pain and all of my own character flaws are just gone because my karma is balanced or something. And it's like, it's a very nice story. It's very desirable. But it's not really actually how things work. And sometimes it's going to be, right? And that's why I'm always like, I don't know, maybe someone is traveling through space with the god. I'm not in charge of these things. Like, I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of liars and that there's a lot of tales being spun that are damaging, and in the same way that this is true in every community.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the shortcuts that people think that they're going to get within the community, because I see this all the time, definitely in the spiritual community. They're like, yeah, we're going to ascend straight into 5D. The earth is ascending. We're going right to the fifth dimension where everything is going to be rainbows and unicorns, and it's going to be beneficial for everyone, right? And that's a big thing that's been perpetuated within this community.
Yeah.
And I said a really long time ago when I first started this channel that there is no ascension, right? Because I believe that we're already the perfect race as we are, right? Why do we need any kind of upgrade? We don't need any kind of upgrade. And any kind of ascension is going to be an after death ascension, right? That's the whole definition of what ascension means, is when you die you ascend to a different realm, a non-physical realm. Well, maybe in that realm it seems physical because everybody is non-physical and translucent, right? So it would be physical there, but non-physical here.
Well, you definitely can ascend in yourself in your life before death. And you can do that in various ways. And it's the same as, people have said like, oh, have you had your awakening? Well, I've had multiple awakenings. I mean, do you want me to list them? Like, it's not like you awaken once, right? And if you're talking about some kind of ultimate awakening, then how ultimate are you going to get, right? Because essentially at the end of all things, you're reuniting with source. A little bit boring, honestly. I'm like okay where I'm at. I kind of enjoy this ride that I've created for myself. So I'm not really all about ultimate awakening or ultimate ascension anyway just yet. Like, I'm just where I'm at, and we're all awakening more and more all the time, and therefore we're all ascending more and more all the time. If you put it in a hierarchical sort of state, like, you are always progressing. So what is that if not ascension? But yeah, this idea that we're just going to have this magical timeline shift and suddenly everyone's going to have med beds and perfect hair and like no fat on their body or whatever, it's nice. Again, it's really cool fan fiction, and it definitely lets you not have to worry as much. It's just like, this shit where you're like, oh, Jesus washed away your sins, so you ask for forgiveness, you're done. And then, oh, you sinned again? Well, just ask for forgiveness again. So you can actually sin as much as you want. You just keep asking for forgiveness and you're good. There's truth to that. You can forgive anyone and anyone can forgive you over and over and over again as much as you want. But at the same time, wouldn't the nice goal be to like stop fucking up in the first place? Like stop making those mistakes and aim to be a better person more and more and more so. And, that is ascension. That is awakening. And it's something you do with yourself within your life, the every day and moment of your life, and probably beyond death and maybe into the next life. And on and on. So that's kind of tiring for people to consider, but I'm like excited by it. I'm like, cool, bring on the more. I want new things. I want challenges. I want to always be moving forward. Like, I don't want to sit in my stagnant crap and just not move. Right. And it can be really hard. It can be really challenging. It can be really difficult. But there are no shortcuts, and the shortcuts are what are being sold. And anytime, my dad told me this when I was little, and I'm so glad he did, because it's turned out to be mostly true most of the time. And that is, if it's the easy path, it's probably not the best path. Right? If there's the shortcut being offered to you, there's always going to be the catch, and you're always going to have to probably come back and actually fix something and heal something that you thought you bypassed, because there is no real bypassing.
Let's go with past lives, because this is a really important one, and how that because you've done a lot of different past life stuff and you've dealt with that, but I have a completely different theory on what past lives are. I don't think that the past lives are actually lives that we really lived. I think that they're a part of a fractal of a consciousness, and we come in with those different fractaled past life consciousness whenever we come into this reality. And that's another misconception that people are, coming up with and saying, is that, oh, well, I lived all these lives for real, right? Well, how does that make any kind of sense? It doesn't make any logical, sense. It makes more sense that these are fractals of lives that is attached onto you whenever you came into this life, because everyone can't be Mary Magdalene, everyone can't be Jesus, everyone can't be all these important figures in their past lives, right? Unless they're fractals of that consciousness that's been split off, and then multiple people have them, right? And I think that we have like a soul driver within us, right? We have like a consciousness that is just pure us, and then there's like all of these different fractals of consciousness that are attached on to ours, and what we might remember from a past life doesn't necessarily mean that we lived it.
Yeah, I don't actually see it very differently than you. And, the way I explain it to people is very similar to what you just said. And what it looks to me on the soul level is that your soul is sort of like picking up a thread. It is like a fractal thread. It's like a passageway of energy throughout human history. And sometimes it is very similar to your genetic history as well. So you actually have both going on. There's like an energetic sort of history, and there's the genetic sort of history. And so you've got things that can look and feel like past lives that are actually your ancestors' lives, right? That are coming through. They're literally being carried in your DNA. So you have access to all of them, through that sort of epigenetic memory that's stored in there. And then you also have this energetic thread, and it looks a little bit different on the astral level. And some people look like they have actually gone through that with their conscious mind and presence. And other people look like it's almost like they stepped into it. Like they came from wherever they came from as a soul, and they were like, this is the thread I'm going to be working on now with all of humanity. And so either way, you're coming into this life and you've got all of these sort of energies. And astrologers might see that as coming through like the lens of like the stars and the planets and the arrangement that they were in, right? But it's a similar sort of thing where you're like coming in with this sort of energetic flavors, you might say, right? And what it also comes through to me as is this sort of workload you've got, right? Like the karma that you've picked up. Either you've actually accumulated it by moving through it, or you walked into it and picked it up. And either way, it's the actions and consequences. And so one way of thinking of that is that there's mistakes or lessons or whatever people want to call it, blockages, karmic, load that has been existing in that energetic strand, that fractal. And you are working with it. You're working to balance it. You're working to gain the information that comes from being able to access that specific line. Or, you might look at it as something you kind of owe karmically to bring balance to that. Like, oh, I made these mistakes in the past, or my ancestors did, or this energetic line did. And so now we're working to learn from that and not make that mistake anymore, right? Or even do, good works or whatever to sort of balance it, if you can look at it that way. And either way, it comes down to the same effect in your life, right? So I'm never big on saying like, this is for sure what's happening. You definitely lived these lives as an actual individual soul, and that was the life, and here was your name, and here was the date. Like, it doesn't matter to me. But the effect in your life today is what does matter to me. So again, I look at it the way I just described it. You look at it the way you're describing it. Astrologers may look at it like that other way. Other people may look at it the other way. But what does it actually matter in your life right now? Well, what it matters right now, for example, I just did a past life tarot reading with somebody. And, the life that was coming up was one in which they were an aristocratic person who was persecuting lower classes in like a factory sort of thing that they owned. And they were damaging lives. Like there was physical poisons going on with this work that people were getting into their biological systems. And then there's also the energetic, feeling of being oppressed and not being paid enough, not being valued. And this person was the one creating that for all of them. So this life, the karma was coming back at them as physical degradation in the form of heavy poisons that they had, felt unfairly exposed to in this life. Like, it wasn't, how unfair, I didn't choose this, why would I choose this? But you could see this sort of karmic balance of it. And energetically as well, they were having a really hard time becoming a leader ever in any sort of way, because when they had been a sort of leader or in a position, you would hope someone would take some responsibility and care for those who seem to be under them, quote unquote, right? That they had misused that and abused that so poorly. So it was being blocked from them in this life, right? So you can start to see some of the patterns and the reasons why certain things happen. And that is just a helpful lens, right? Because now you can see for yourself, like, yeah, maybe there are reasons why my soul chose to have this experience in this life. Maybe there's things that I can learn to let go of. And maybe I can see in myself some of those same mistakes, right? Some of those same energetic flavors. Like, am I a little bit arrogant sometimes? Maybe, right? Or do I look down on some people sometimes? Like, maybe. Or do I like kind of take advantage of people sometimes? Maybe. And how can I bring more balance to that in this life to actually change my experience, to give myself more happiness, more success, and more peace. And if you're not using any healing modality in that way to answer those questions, it's kind of worthless anyway. Like, why do you want to look at a past life if it isn't to help your current understanding of who you are, and where you're going anyway? Whenever I hear people talk about like, oh yeah, I was Joan of Arc, I'm like, you went to a bullshit artist. Like, there's like very little chance you were Joan of Arc. Like you said, like, how many people can really be Joan of Arc? There's a lot of bullshit artists out there, right? And so you do have to be careful of that. And again, what's the point? What's the point of thinking you're Joan of Arc, right? Or thinking that was one of your lives? Like, how does it help you in this life?
Making you seem more important than what you are, right?
Shortcut. It's a shortcut.
And it's exactly, I remember what I was going to say now was about what you mentioned, is that the truth is not as extravagant and it's normally boring than the exaggerated nonsense that people come up with. And I've seen this whole thing as like an evolving thing, right? Because back in like 2010 and even before that, people were like, oh yes, in a past life I was Isis, and in a past life I was Ra, I was Amun Ra, and now it's evolved into I'm Earth's ambassador. I am the only Earth ambassador for the Galactic Federation, blah, blah, blah. I'm from Lyra. I'm the 24th and a half 2/4 Nickelback dimension from Zeta Reticuli. You know what I mean? Is morphed and has changed into something completely different. But I think that's where the basis of it really came from, was from this past life stuff and trying to make you seem more important than what you are, so that people will listen to you, right? That is used as an excuse a lot of times with a lot of these people, to prop them up, to make them seem more valid in the things that they're saying, right? Well, would you rather be listening to just me, or would you rather be listening to the Egyptian sun god Amun Ra reincarnated as me? Right.
Yeah. And it's the same thing as the, what we were talking about. With any of this stuff, right? Like with the twin flame stuff, or when people come to me and they're like, I have a demonic possession for sure. And I'm like, it actually turns out you have a lot of trauma, and people don't want to hear that. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm going to tell you. Most of the time, that's what you're going to hear from me, right? And if you come to me for a past life, most of the time it's going to be very average and normal. It's nothing fancy. It's not even the life itself that matters anyway, or the status of that life. It's those karmic imbalances that matter. Those are the things we're actually trying to pull out and get, because that's what's actually helpful for you. What's actually helpful for you right now isn't believing that you have a demonic possession. It's understanding that you have stuff in your psyche that you've repressed and hidden for so long that it feels alien to you. It feels foreign to you. And it feels like something you're scared of and you want to run away from. I understand. I've been there. Like, it is terrifying and it feels foreign and alien, and it's not a demonic encounter. There are demonic encounters, and I find those too. They're just exceptionally rare. Honestly, it's very unlikely that you're going to come to me, you're going to find that. But you're absolutely right, Ryder, that there's a lot of people out there that want to seem important, and they want to help other people seem important. And so they have, instead of a healing relationship with one another, a lying relationship with one another. I'm going to tell you that you were Isis because it feels good for you. And then you're going to like me. Then you're going to come back to me over and over again. And I'm going to make so much money off you. Right. And I'm personally not about that. I'm about the truth. And so I have some people who are very dedicated to their healing who come back again and again and again for a year and a half. I have people who work every month, every week, and I have other people who come once and they realize I'm not that person and they never come back again. It's not the only reason people might not come back. I'm just saying, like, some people are really looking for that lie and they want that and they don't see it here and they move on. And I'm happy because I want to work with people who are very dedicated to their own upliftment and healing, because that's what I'm about. I know that's what makes the world a better place. And that's all I really care about.
And that's really important too, that you told that person, no, it's not a demonic attachment, because if they would have went to somebody else that was fake and they came to them and said, oh yeah, I have a demonic attachment, then that fake person would have been like, oh yes, you have a horrible demonic attachment. Let me clear that out for you,
Well,
so
even
it
that,
shows your
let
integrity.
me clear that out for you. Like, how would I clear your demonic attachment? You're the one who invited it. You're the one who created it. You're the one who's going to get rid of it. I'm here to help support you to do that for yourself in every way possible. And you're going to do it if that is something you're experiencing. Same with the other. If it's not what you're experiencing, I'm here to help you heal that too. And you're the one who's going to do it. As soon as you think someone else can even do it for you, you've already started making a mistake. And as soon as they tell you they can do it for you, they're already lying to you.
Absolutely, I agree. And it shows your integrity and your honesty as well.
Thank you.
So what is I don't know, maybe the wildest or the craziest experience that you have ever seen, like on somebody, like, and that you've helped them through that? Because I think this is a really important thing to talk about too, is that some of these things do exist, and let's get into that. Let's get into what was that one thing that you saw that you were like, holy shit, like, this is the real deal, right? This is actually 100% happening, and I'm seeing it for myself right now in this moment.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. So I guess, like, if there's anyone sensitive out there and they don't like that sort of stuff, that this might not be the segment for you. But what I do generally, and this is in those more severe cases and scenarios, I'll do a healing ceremony with somebody. And I use shamanic practices and tools that I've been trained in for many years. And I go into what I call the spiritual space. And in that space, I can see more clearly, what is actually going on. What it looks like to me is like a large dome, or almost sort of spherical sort of place. Always in the center is the person themselves. This is like their it almost is like, it doesn't always look this way, because each person is actually very, very different of how things look and feel. But it's often kind of like a tree, like they're in the center. And if they're in a very healthy, uplifted, positive, very whole place, they will be standing upright, and their energy is sort of flowing out the top, just like a tree would with its branches, and they're rooted down into the space, just like the roots would be. So you can kind of imagine that sort of space, and it's kind of toroidal, right? And that's not that common. It's just as uncommon as people with actual demonic possession or attachment, that someone is that upright and that glowing. And a lot of us are in very different states than that most of the time. And that's why people come to me. So it's normal. But in that space, then I can instantly see if there are dark energies and attachments around. And sometimes they're pretty good at hiding. But what I'm actually doing is having my guides and allies show me the things that are there and going on, and their guides and allies are the ones that are also helping with that. So really, I'm just an observer this whole time, and no matter what is happening and what level of healing or service I'm offering to people, that's how it is for me. I'm observing, and other energies and entities are the ones actually doing anything. So I don't really do anything. I don't really direct. I just ask to be shown and present for whatever's going to go on. And I request sometimes higher level energy or healing or intention. And in that way, I guess I sort of do direct some things some ways. But in that space, then I asked to be shown that, and we do that first in that space because it's important to clear any darkness before we do any other work, so that it's not influencing or blocking anything that could be happening, and especially so that soul in the center there feels safer to start to heal other aspects. Because again, there's always some root to this. There's always some moment where you invited it in or opened the doorway to it. In other words, it never ever happens just by accident. I've never seen that, at least, and I don't think that it's possible because of my experience. So in that space, the most I'll say intense entity and energy that was attached to a person was one that has a name, but I won't say it, but everyone would recognize the name. And it is a demon that is known by a name. And I didn't even ask. I don't want to know their names. I don't want to know anything about them, really. I want to know if they're there or not, and if we have to do anything about it. And so I was shown that definitely this was there, that it was the most powerful and largest energy, negative energy that I had ever seen or felt before. And I was shielded from that, and I am protected in that way, which is part of why I do this work willingly, because I know how strong that protection is, and you have to have faith in that, and you have to know that you have that for it to be effective, especially when you're going to interact with an entity of this level. So what I do then is I ask that allies and guides what they would like to do about it, or what we need to do about it. And most often there's some sort of I'll say soul retrieval that happens in this case. So energetically then what has actually happened is that not only is this entity got its sort of pinchers in and claws in through whatever door you opened and is sort of hooked and attached to you, but it has also managed to sort of shimmy away from you aspects of yourself. It's really interesting when you look at this from a psychological perspective. The psychologists and psychiatrists would look at this in a very similar way. And I've talked with psychologists and psychiatrists many times who have asked me, and we've talked about that exact thing. Like, doesn't this seem similar to like what we would do in therapy? And every time I'm like, yeah, these are the same exact things. They're just happening from different points of view. And this is, again, why I say I'm not attached too much to what exactly is happening from various points of view, so much as I am concerned with the outcome, and that people actually heal and find lives in which they feel happy and at peace. So, but what's happening is, again, something has been seemingly siphoned away or given away, and now this demonic energy is holding it captive, sort of, right? It's like a hostage, and that's a piece of your soul. And in psychiatry, you might say this person had like gone against their own morals or convictions or their own conscience enough times that they've like lost a piece of themselves, or they're so terrified or so overwhelmed by the emotion or the trauma that they disconnected from it and shattered right into a dissociative identity disorder, or other type of thing would be similar to this, right? So I call it a set fragment of a soul, and that we're doing a soul retrieval, and they call it, these other things, and they're integrating it back into your psyche. It's the same thing though. So I'm seeing that this known, large, powerful, ancient demon is attached to this person, and that they have a piece of their soul. And so I asked them, like, well, what will we do about this? It's different each time how we get the fragment back and what actually happens. The soul itself has to have invited this, asked for it, and be a part of it, right? That soul in the center there, like they're the one who actually has to be, no one can do it for them, right? So they're a part of this too. And in this specific case, one of their allies came forward, was a little moth. It was just a tiny little moth. It's so sweet and cute. And I was like, how is a tiny little moth going to overcome this gigantic ancient? I mean, the way that it looks to me in the soul space, beings are huge sometimes, or they're very little and very bright, maybe, or very dark, maybe, depending on their persuasion. But for example, if I was going to see someone like Jesus, he would look very big to me. I would look very small in comparison to him. I could still see all of him and there's no real space there. So it's hard to describe, but I might then also see like a spirit guide that's a cat, and it might just be kind of a normal sized cat. This is a very small moth. So you kind of think like, well, that demon is huge. And how are we going to actually do this? But I have long since learned that I am not in charge of how or anything, and that my job is to just observe and trust and have faith that this is what we're doing and it's going to work. So this little moth takes me and kind of like and the person, and kind of like encapsulates us in this like invisibility cloak. And I was like, wow, we're actually just going to sneak in. It's not always this way. In other situations, we very directly just confront the being, and it's like told to let go and to get out. And the person reclaims and reestablishes their sovereignty and their choice and their free will. And they're actually, empowering their own strength in that, which is great, because that's going to continue if this is going to last. And in this case, we did almost exactly the opposite. And we literally snuck in and went through various levels of what was very dark energy and very oppressive, but we were like shielded from it until we found the little piece of the soul was tucked away in a very dark, far away, disgusting place. And we retrieved it. And we got back out again. And as we came back into that spiritual sort of central place, and that soul was there, and we offered this, peace to them in that level of themselves, and they decided to take it back in again, that entity just detached its presence from them. It's very clear in many of these cases that person is going to have to do some work to keep that level of entity away from them, right? And to also understand what they did in order to invite it in the first place. And so that was also part of what we did in that ceremony, was find the roots of that behavior and action that had invited it in the first place. And after the ceremony, there's always some counseling and some interaction that goes on where we talk about how to live after this and keep that energy out of your sphere, right? And can discontinue your connection with it consciously, which is that's the other half of this at least. All right. So they chose to come into this. They chose to do this level of healing. They're also the ones that either takes that piece of themselves back in or not. And I've done soul retrievals before where people haven't. When we get back to that central space and they're sort of offered this piece, they've just sort of been like, no, I'm not doing it. and on the conscious level, they're like, why would I do that? And it's like, I'm not in charge of it, so I don't know, but you're just not ready actually. And that's just the way it's going to be. And in one of these cases where that happened, and I work with a lot of people. I don't have a great memory, so I don't always remember when someone comes back to me a year later that we even worked together before. And I feel very badly about this, but it's just how it is. So apparently this happened. One of the times this happened, I should say, the message that came with it was that one of their guides came forward and offered to hold it for them and said, like, I'll hold it so it doesn't go away again, but I'll just kind of stay near. And when they are ready, they're going to bring it back in, and it's going to be reintegrated into their heart. That's not always where it reintegrates. Sometimes it's part of their memory and it goes into their sort of mind area. And sometimes it's part of a, sexual trauma, and it might go into their root area or something. In this case, they were told that it was going to come back into their heart. And so afterwards, we were talking about this, and I was sharing, you did not reintegrate this piece. It is retrieved. It's being held by your ally here. And they're saying that when you're ready, you're going to bring it back into your heart. When they said, well, that's disappointing, but okay, and we moved on, we went forward, and there's lots and lots of other healing and messages that come on with those ceremonies, but whatever, it was over. And then they came back a year later. I, again, didn't even remember that previous ceremony. We didn't do another ceremony. We did a different type of session where their guides and allies can come through, and healings can occur and do often occur. This isn't a guidance session. And one of their allies came forward and was holding a glowing ball. And I said, oh, one of your allies is here and they're holding this ball. And they said, this is for her heart. And I said, well, they're asking you to take it into your heart. And I saw her on the spiritual level reach up and take it and put it into her heart. She had all of these experiences in the moment when that happened consciously, and I was just watching it happen and like overwhelmed, because this doesn't always happen. A soul retrieval doesn't usually happen in a guidance session, and so I was like, wow, you're so lucky. Like, this is really cool, and I'm so happy for you. And and she's like, well, you told me it was going to happen. And I was like, I did? She's like, yeah, a year ago, I didn't take it in fully. And you said that, I would take it in when I was ready. And I was like, oh, I do kind of remember that. So it did happen when she was ready. And she actually had gone through a lot of healing in the in-between time and was finally ready. Like, her heart was finally open and able to accept that. So it's really beautiful. And as dark as some of those things we encounter in that space can be, and as powerful as demons can seem, nothing's actually ever more powerful than you and your choice and your sovereignty. And you can heal anything. I've seen people heal amazing levels of themselves in these various different things I get to work with them on. So I guess I went off your question a bit, but
Have you seen any human manipulation or human psychic manipulation on someone? Because this is kind of what I was talking about in the beginning when we first started. Like, I don't necessarily believe that all of this can be attributed to the same thing.
yeah.
Because I did a whole series on the Stargate project, which is a government ran DIA, CIA, Army intelligence program that were studying psychics, remote viewers, ESP abilities. And I interviewed a lot of people that were legitimately a part of that program during the Cold War. And specifically one named Lynn Buchanan. And I was interviewing him and we were talking, and I was like, he told me the story of these men in black people, these government officials coming up to him and asking him if he could kill somebody with his mind. Right. And apparently, Lynn said, no, I'm not going to do that. But I asked him in the interview, I was like, hey, I know that you said no, but could you have done that? Could you have, killed this person with your mind if you wanted to? Was it a possibility? And he said, yes, it was a possibility. I absolutely could have killed the target that they wanted me to kill with my mind. And then I'm like, okay, well, if you can kill somebody with your mind, then what else can you do? Can you control somebody with your mind? Can you influence somebody with your mind? Can you plant thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and all this into somebody else's mind with your psychic abilities? Right. So all of that to ask you the question, have you seen psychic manipulation on somebody from another human?
Absolutely. And in multiple ways. So one of the most common ways, and I will see them as humans, and it will be obvious that they're humans. Humans on that level just don't shine as brightly as I guess what we might call like ascended masters or saints or Buddhas or whatever, those types of beings. So it's clear that they are human, and it's usually clear whether they're still alive or not, although honestly, sometimes I don't know if they really know. So if they believe they're alive, but they're not, like, it gets confusing. And I've seen both. So I've seen people's ancestors especially will often be like attached to them. And sometimes it's more of a sort of parasitic relationship. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's very beautiful and they're there helping and they're, guiding them and whispering things in their ears that are helpful and encouraging their heart, and there's a beautiful relationship. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're there and they're angry and they're attached and they're like, you're, telling them bad things about themselves or whatever, and or trying to exact revenge for whatever they feel like they're owed. And so those are more sort of nefarious attachments and energies. And so there's that level of things that can happen. There's also the human level of I'll just call it like the maybe subconscious or karmic sort of attachment we have. So if we've harmed a being or they've harmed us, we're still attached to them until we've truly forgiven each other and released it. And so you can see this on the subtle level too, if you're looking for it, and find how many attachments we have to people because of the mistakes we've made or that they've made towards us that we haven't let go of. And some of those come from previous lives as well, or like how we were talking about earlier, from just the energetic strand or fractal strand you're connected with, or your ancestral connections to. And those can feel very unfair to people. Like, I didn't do that. My ancestors didn't. It's like, well, you chose this DNA. So, that's what you decided to be a part of. And you can work on releasing that too. And it's actually very easy. Anybody can do it. It's just forgiveness in your heart and just holding it there genuinely. And some people call these cord cutting ceremonies and things like that, right? There's also the human attachments that we're just in. We just choose that we're right now. They're our friends and our family, and we're connected to them, and those are affecting us. And all of these can be unintentionally positive, unintentionally negative, intentionally positive, intentionally negative, and that can all happen. In my experience as well, there can be people who come and try to interfere just like a demonic entity might, in negative ways and positive ways. But in one of the experiences I've had is that the person would call themselves a magician, and a magician had their sights set on me. They wanted to just spy on me. They just wanted to know what I was doing, what I was about, what I thought I was doing, what my real motivations were. But I saw them come into my, psychic space, trying to spy on me in this way. And because I saw them and was aware of it, I could also then, what I actually did in my mind was pick them up and throw them into their own crystal ball. And that really threw them through a loop. They had no idea what was going on. And I kind of laughed, like, get away from me. You can just ask me in real life what I'm doing if you'd like to know. You don't have to come spy on me in this way. So people can do things like that too. It is my experience that no one can do anything to you against your will. So if you believe someone can kill you from afar, then you're essentially giving them permission to do so. And if you believe you're protected from that, or that you're stronger than them and that you can keep yourself alive because that is your will, then they can't do that to you. There's definitely people who would not agree with me about that. And I'm very interested in continuing to hold that belief, because it is what has protected me so far from every level of astral attack or psychic attack that has ever been leveled at me.
Well, the problem with that is that a lot of people don't believe the psychic abilities are even real, right? So why would they
definitely don't believe in themselves.
So why would they even think about that? They wouldn't even know that that even exists. So if they don't know that it exists, then that would make it to where someone could actually do that, right? If they don't have the awareness that you could be controlled by another human being psychically, thoughts implanted into your head, or raise your blood pressure to such a degree that you have an aneurysm or have a heart attack and you die, right? Then they wouldn't have any defense against it. They wouldn't know that if they don't know that it's possible, then they don't have any defense, right? So I agree with you to an extent, but also on the other hand,
it's more subtle than that, though. It's really about your empowerment and your idea of self. So like, if you look at most people are out here not believing in themselves in every way possible. I'm not even talking about spiritual, like mumbo jumbo or anything. I'm just saying they're out there going like, I'm a piece of shit and I don't really deserve love and I don't deserve much and I don't really control my life and I'm at the mercy of everything but myself. And so that's that. And that person is probably going to be able to be afflicted in many different ways by many different beings and possibly killed psychically. Whereas there are some people who are like, oh no, like I'm me and I have full control and power over myself. And I'm maybe even protected on other levels by other beings who are on my side. So you can't touch me. And there's that level. I don't have to necessarily wonder or think about like, or list out, right? Like I'm protected from psychic killing. I'm protected from this. I'm protected from this. I don't have to have them as specific individual singular beliefs, as long as I just know my own worth and value and trust in that, right? This is why I'm also very big on promoting that those ideas in people and that understanding of themselves in people. And, that's what I do on my show. And especially on Middle Path, is reminding people you're in control of your life and you are a valuable, beautiful, amazing piece of source or God or nature, whatever you call it. And it's fucking amazing. That's you. Like you have that. And when you know that, your life changes dramatically, and those types of energies can no longer sway you.
Yeah, I agree. It's just that there are powerful psychics out there. There are people that can do this kind of stuff, right? They can infiltrate into your mind. And it's just interesting to me that some of this phenomenon might not even be coming from a entity or a demon or a spirit or any of that. It can legitimately be coming from another human being. And I think that that whole thing evolved one more time. They don't use humans to do that anymore, right? Well, governmentally, I don't think that they use humans to do it anymore. They've developed that into a technology. It's a technology now that is infiltrating into people's minds and planting thoughts and ideas and controlling them and changing their belief systems and their thoughts and their ideas. I mean, you don't have to look very far to see that that's a reality. I mean, just look at
Yeah.
2020, right? And there's actually a patent for this kind of technology, and it's a patent for subliminal acoustic manipulation of the nervous system.
Yes.
Right. And then there's also patents for V2K. V2K is in use, which is a device that is used to do exactly what I just said: plant thoughts, ideas, beliefs, that little voice in your head to control you, manipulate you, to make you do things that you wouldn't normally do under regular circumstances, right? And
Yes.
there's proof for this.
Yeah.
There's proof for this kind of technology exists, and I think that it evolved out of these psychics and these people that were cyclically trying to implant thoughts, ideas, and beliefs in the people's heads through the
Yeah.
governmental programs.
And that's all media really is as well, right? Is another outgrowth of that attempt to plant ideas into people's minds. The truth is that you can protect yourself from all of that, and you can be in a place where none of it can affect you. And you can choose to believe that or not, but that's also proven over and over again. And the people that we see prove that tend to be monks, right? And we're like, wow, they're magic. They're super people. How do they melt the snow in like sub-freezing temperatures while they're naked for hours and never get cold, right? How do they literally drop a vial of acid and have no change in their brain activity? That's not even possible, but they're doing it, and it is possible. So again, you have every capacity to do the same thing. They're not different from us. That's a biological fact of being human. But when you don't believe that you can, then you can't. Absolutely. You're not going to. And when you know that you can, then you move closer and closer towards that ideal of self. And it also is going to affect every area of your life. It's not just so simple sometimes as going like, yeah, I believe that. Well, if you believe that, but you're still like watching TV 8 hours a day and, I don't know, filling your body with a bunch of toxins and stuff and injecting yourself with experimental medications, then it's going to be easier for other things to come in. So the doorways we can open to all these energies, human, demonic, angelic, and otherwise, they're all happening all day, every day. They're happening in our heart, in our mind, in our body. And if we're ingesting certain things, or we're ingesting them audibly, or we're ingesting them visibly, or we're taking them in our mouth or other pathways, those are the ways that we open these doors to these types of beings, no matter who they are, no matter what level they're acting on, physical or interdimensional or, spiritual or otherwise. So that's how I understand things. And that has always been proven true for me in my experience as well.
Thanks so much for coming on my show, Lindsey. Appreciate your time here this evening. Let people know where they can find you, or if they would like to book a session with you, let them know. Plug any of your social medias, your YouTube channel, Rokfin, all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryder. It's always excellent to talk with you and your brilliant mind. And you can find me at rogueways.org is the best place. That has the links to the show, the books that I've written, and all the other things that I do. You can also book a session there on rogueways.org with me if you want to work one-on-one together. And I do that in all sorts of ways. We just can do a talk session, a coaching session. We can do that guidance session where we get your guides and allies coming through on your behalf to give you blessings, healings, and messages. And we can do tarot and other things as well as sound healing. So I have a lot of stuff to offer people, no matter where they're at. And I think that's the best place for all of it. I can't think of anything else to offer people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The links to all of Lindsey's information will be in the description of this video. For everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. Much love to everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the YouTube algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. The links to all of my information is also in the bio. And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep loving your heart for everyone. Stay safe out there. And if you can see through the illusion, you are the solution. See you guys next time.